what you need to do is to tell a story where you're not the hero, your client is. Your client's the main protagonist. They're going to have a challenge that they need to overcome. And then there's going to be a story arc that you're going to lead them through to hopefully a happy ending for both you and the client.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Inventive AI Podcast. We focus on having insightful conversation with leaders in sales, proposal management, customer success, and try to tease out strategies and learnings around go-to-market, customer acquisition, proposals, and winning deals. So I'm extremely excited to talk to Darrell Woodward today, who is my guest. Darrell is a thought leader in the proposal and bid writing space. He has over 18 years of experience in the field, with at least 7 as an independent proposal automation consultant at Prosfora Solutions. He has spoken at multiple industry conferences and contributed articles on proposal automation, content library, design, careers in bid and proposal industry, and personal development and well-being. Excited about this chat, Darrell. Welcome to the Inventive Podcast.
Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
Awesome. Can you start by telling us a bit about how you got into proposal management and the work that you do right now?
Yeah, sure. So I, like many people, I think in proposal management, fell into it completely by accident and then fell in love with it. So I remember that I was working for an organization many years ago now, and we received an RFP from a potential customer. And a proper kind of business, transformational for the business type of RFP as well. And what immediately struck me was that absolutely nobody knew what to do about it. Salespeople didn't know, marketing didn't know, and I just sat there and read through the instructions on the RFP, and I thought, well, I get what we're supposed to do here. And started to kind of take control of it in terms of what we needed to do. And it started to occur to me that, maybe this was a thing, that answering these questionnaires was something that happened regularly in the world of work, but perhaps nobody knew how to do this. And maybe I'd stumbled on something that I was accidentally an expert in, and I could take that and do something with it. So I then discovered, though, that there was an entire community of bid and proposal professionals and an association with APMP and an entire industry around RFP response. And it made me realize that actually I really didn't know how to do this at all, but I still really wanted to get into it. And there were lots of people to learn from, lots to learn, but I just felt that it was something that really kind of excited me. It's a wonderful mix of sales and marketing, and you really kind of get to talk to lots of people around the business to try and pull everything together. So I just found something that I really, really, really enjoyed, and that was mostly how I got into it. And then, as you say, 18 years ago, sort of started full time in bidding.
That's awesome. Yeah, I've heard that a lot from some of the proposal managers I've talked to. Like, they just stumbled upon this area and just absolutely fell in love because they like writing and creating things that win deals for the company. So great to hear that. Yeah. So you've been in this space for a very long time. What, according to you, comprises of a winning proposal, and what would you say are the key elements of these proposals?
Yeah, good question. So when I first started, I very quickly picked up on the fact that what you needed to do was be compliant. That was everything, right? We had to answer all of the questions, answer them completely, be compliant to all of the instructions, provide a solution for exactly what the client was asking for. And then, of course, as I moved on a little bit, I realized that, of course, everyone is working towards compliance, and that doesn't really set you apart. So now I feel much more that winning proposals is really about telling a story, and you have to tell a really good story that your prospective client is going to feel part of, going to engage with and understand and see themselves within that story, and that's going to kind of lead them down a path. So I feel that what you need to do is to tell a story where you're not the hero, your client is. Your client's the main protagonist. They're going to have a challenge that they need to overcome. And then there's going to be a story arc that you're going to lead them through to hopefully a happy ending for both you and the client. So I think what really kind of sets the winning proposals apart now is about getting that story right, getting a narrative that's compelling and interesting and leads the client through what they need to know about you and how you're going to help them and how you're going to work together and ultimately solve their problem for them.
Got it. Yeah, I love it. It's definitely a story that you're creating. Can you also maybe elaborate a little bit on what type of proposals have you been mostly dealing with, or they're like federal, state, local on the government side, and then there are also like commercial proposals. Just generally, like what area have you mostly operated in?
So mostly, certainly in bidding, most of my career has been in IT security in particular, and that's been a real mix of commercial and public sector. They have quite so much federal in the UK, but certainly public sector at both local and national level. Now, of course, though, I'm really in the proposal automation space. So rather than being involved directly with bids, now I'm helping people to automate theirs. My role really is just to kind of help them close that gap between what it is that they really want to do, and then how their proposal automation tool actually works. And sometimes that's a case of just adapting their process to take advantage of some feature or capability within the technology that will make their processes better. And other times it's understanding a little bit about the technology and adapting that and using its capabilities to match their processes. So really just about making the whole process just easier, faster, better, and try and bring them together that way.
That's awesome. Yeah. What are the biggest challenges that you have faced or generally bid teams face in writing proposals? I know this is a can of worms.
Yeah.
But what are the top things that you would say are the challenges for bid teams as of now?
Yeah, so I think it's probably can be summed up as we're being driven to win more with fewer resources in less time and against more competition. And by win more, I mean there's a lot of pressure on bid teams now to just bid everything or bid more. And then you start getting kind of salespeople and sales leaders. They come up with wonderful phrases like, "Oh, it's a numbers game," or "You've got to be in it to win it." And that might be somewhat true of sales, but I think in bids and proposals, it's a big investment to go ahead and to bid on something. And so that numbers game has to be tempered with, well, is it actually going to be worth it? So I think, and I increasingly see that. And one of the problems that I see on the technology side then is that the idea of technology being faster and more efficient then naturally leads to, well, great, that means we can bid more. And I desperately try to fight against that that kind of initial assumption, because whilst that might be true and also might to a certain extent be beneficial, I think what you can really do is to bid better. And then fewer resources in terms of, we're working with a whole set of experts and other contributors, but they're under pressure too, and they're under that same win more, less time pressure in their own roles, and then we need to pull them out and take their attention to focus on what we need to do, and that's that's both tough for them and then difficult for us to try and manage as well. So managing and understanding the context of who our what our contributors are having to do, I think is a major part of what can be very frustrating in the bidding role. Less time, I think deadlines are always tightening. Certainly my experience as a frontline bid manager was they were just getting shorter and shorter all the time. And I certainly ended up a few years ago with, it was very typical to get 3 weeks to respond to, quite significant RFPs as well. And quite a few of them were down to as little as 1 week. So just getting tighter and tighter all the time, and becomes more and more difficult to do a good and satisfying job as a bid manager when you're under so much time restraint. And then of course the world is highly competitive, so we're facing the challenge of that other bid teams are also trying to win. They're also using all of the techniques available to the profession. We've probably been on the same training courses and the same conferences, and we've been very friendly to each other because that's what bid people do. But we're also competing with each other, and we're trying to get just that little edge to make prospects choose us over our competition. And I think that sort of sense of a more competitive world is putting more and more pressure on us as people as well. And all of that really for me leads to the effect that it's having on our well-being. I think probably the biggest overall challenge for bid people right now is our own sense of well-being. Are we getting enough rest, and are we getting enough job satisfaction, and are we able to learn and develop ourselves, or is it just a sort of relentless drive towards bidding more, winning more?
Right. Yeah. So many great points in there that you touched upon. I think bidding more. I've had these conversations with a bunch of sales leaders where, like, they would say that, hey, we want to qualify the leads better so we can spend time on, like, put more wood behind fewer arrows. But a lot of proposal managers essentially say the opposite, like our leadership is pushing us to do more, and that's why we are trying to find tools that can help with automation and things like that. The well-being aspect is such an important one. Like, I think every proposal manager I've spoken to is under the gun because they have like tight deadlines, and it's just very hard to do that under such tight deadlines, and it's always deadline. Like, you guys don't have a week or 2 weeks where you don't have a deadline, right? So that's definitely a very hard part.
Yeah, and I think, the good news on well-being, I think, is, increasingly I'm seeing more and more people talking about well-being, more and more people talking about about how we can manage that for ourselves. More and more sessions at conferences, bid and proposals conferences, where people are talking about well-being and the impact of stress and burnout, and I think that's all good. I feel like we're moving away from that traditional sense of we're kind of superheroes. We work all hours. We have to work, kind of burn the midnight oil, work all evening, work over weekends in order to make sure that we get that bid out. I think that kind of image is starting to fade, and we're rather than celebrating that, we're starting to understand that isn't good for us, and actually look for a better way of doing it for the people involved.
Right, yeah. And I know we are like you're helping us with some of the like writing of our elevating this message about well-being with Inventive. But yeah, I feel that this needs to be talked about more, and this is just like such a pervasive problem. So thanks a lot for bringing it up. You also had an article or a post about biases, about cognitive biases, and how that could be used to influence the decision makers. Can you briefly tell us about that?
Yeah, so I mean, there are many biases, and the first thing to be aware of is that we all have them. It's just a natural part of how humans think and how we process information and see the world. Um, and and it's it's just something that we need to be both aware of and challenge ourselves on, but also understand about ourselves and others that those biases exist. So there are many of them. I'm gonna pick a couple just that I think illustrate how biases might work within the bids and proposal space. So first of all, there's a thing called confirmation bias, and it basically says that we favor information that confirms what we already believe. So we look for the evidence that's going to back up what we already believe, and then we convince ourselves that we made the right, our belief was correct in the first place. It's very hard, therefore, once somebody has made up their mind about something, it becomes much harder to convince them of another thing, because they're not really interested in your rationale, but they are looking for anything that might back up their own beliefs and their own decision. So how it might work in proposals for us is we want our proposal to confirm and provide information that backs up what the prospect already believes. And we can do that in a number of ways. One is great sales and capture, to have already set that in their mind that this is the way to solve your problem. And then when the proposal comes along and explains that in detail, everything that we're providing in that detail is benefiting from confirmation bias, because it backs up what they already understand and believe. So we can use that capability to help them to confirm their own decision. So that, and we can use that so that their system one thinking is to make an emotional decision that I think this is the right thing, this is what I want to do, and then we use confirmation bias to work on their system two thinking, so that we provide them with all of the information they need to kind of back up that decision that they've already taken. You can look at a different type of bias called anchoring, where we tend to overvalue the first information that's presented to us. And this works in a couple of interesting ways in proposals. One is it means that your front page and your executive summary, all the things that come first in our proposal, will tend to be overvalued. They're presented first. That's the thing that sets the anchor for the whole of the rest of your proposal. So it's really important to get those right. And the second thing that you can use with anchoring is to set an expectation for price. So the first time that your client has a sense of what the price of your solution is going to be, is going to anchor their expectations for when you actually deliver the final price. And based on that anchoring, they'll then think that you're cheaper or more expensive than they were expecting. Now there's another great book that I'm currently reading, which is about negotiation, and it uses anchoring to say, when you're talking about price, what you should do is suggest a range, and the bottom end of the range is the price that you actually want to charge. So you'll set a range that says, it's going to be somewhere between $1 million and $1.3 million. And then when you actually come to deliver your quote, your final price, and it's $1 million, the anchoring effect works so that your client thinks, well, actually, that I was thinking maybe somewhere between 1 and 1.3, but 1 is at the bottom end of that. I'm getting a good deal. So anchoring can work quite powerfully in that way. And then one for us as proposal people is our overconfidence bias. So we as humans tend to be overly confident in our own judgments, and that means it makes us actually naturally quite bad at estimating timelines, and the amount of effort required when we're planning for anything. So just on the kind of management side of proposals, that's why planning for contingencies is so important. We will tend to assume that we can get everything done far faster and with far less effort than in reality it actually takes.
Got it. Okay, cool. Yeah, really good set of bias understanding, and I can totally see how you're helping your clients win some proposals and deals. Let's jump into the automation. I think this is the heart of the discussion that I wanted to have with you. So maybe if you can just start by helping us understand what type of automation. You mentioned you help your clients in like type of automation and stuff. Can you elaborate a little bit on how exactly do you help your clients with that? And then I want to, of course, jump into the talk of the town, which is the AI use in proposal management. But let's do that after the first question I have.
Yeah, sure. So I touched on it earlier. I think what I try and encourage my clients to do is to come up with a level of pieces of individual bits of content at a granular level that describes sort of one particular facet of what they do. And then what we want to do is to take multiple pieces of those and then reassemble them using proposal automation software in my case to then build that into a story. So we can ask our users various questions about who the client is and what market they work in, and what size they are, and whether or not they're public or private sector, for example, and what kind of problems that particular sector is facing and dealing with right now, and what just down to even what do they call their customers? Are they customers? Are they subscribers? Are they citizens? How do they describe their own customers? Then we can take all that information along with those small pieces of content and recombine them to get that sort of first draft story that's going to go into our proposal. And the more granular you go, the better your first draft story is going to be. But the problem, of course, is the more content you need to manage and maintain and update. And so there's always a trade-off between, well, how much and how smaller pieces of content can we manage, and how much benefit are we getting from that? So then, I guess a couple of years ago, when generative AI burst onto the scene with ChatGPT, and there was all of the fuss around what that could do and what it meant, for me, it was like, well, this is amazing, because what generative AI is doing is exactly what I've been trying to do with my clients, but at the word level. It's taking those small chunks of content down to individual words, and then based on some information that you give it about what you want it to do, it's reassembling those words into, infinite different ways that can start to tell a story. So for me, it was sort of a natural progression from small bits of, or small chunks of content, down to what generative AI is doing that, but at a word level. And so for me, that's quite a sort of an exciting area to be looking forward to.
Yeah, digging into the generative AI piece a little bit more. So, what do you think, or how do you think Gen AI is actually changing the proposal management and the bid writing space?
It's a good question, because I think it's early days for a start. So I think it's yet to be seen how I think it could do that, and how my kind of own engagement with it is helping me, I think, is three main areas really, which is obviously efficiency. I mean, efficiency is the really big one. It can write huge amounts of if we're talking about text-based generative AI, it can write huge amounts of content with in very little time at all. And so you can save time, literally save time with just the physical act of having to write things down. So I think that there's huge efficiency to be gained. But I also think quality, the ability to maintain really consistent, accurate information all the way through a proposal is something that I think is a headache that proposal managers have had to face for some time. And where you're getting contributions from multiple contributors, they all write in a different way. There's a different voice, and you end up with a proposal that sounds like it's been written by 12 different people because it was. And so I think it can really help with getting all of our content to be just much more consistent, really accurate, same tone of voice throughout, and just elevating the quality from there. And then the third thing really for me, and this is a big one for me personally, because I generally work mostly on my own, working remotely with my clients. It's the creativity aspect. It's having a little assistant that I can go to and I can brainstorm with, and I can ask for alternative ideas. I can present it with information and ask it, what did I miss? And something that maybe I would do to the person sort of sat next to me in an office environment that isn't available to me right now. But I can actually use it to create more creative ideas, to think of new things, and to look at things in different ways, to criticize what I'm doing, to produce content for me that I can criticize without offending anyone as well, which I think is really nice. So it really helps with creativity. But the question for me really is, what do we do with all of those things? Because I think efficiency is great, but let's not use efficiency and time saved just to go back to doing more, bidding more, and focusing on making people more productive all the time, when there are other options. Like, well, maybe we could train them, maybe we can give them some time off, maybe we could use that time to do more research on our client, or to spend more time doing the really interesting and fun parts of proposal management, like getting the story and the strategy right. So I think it's really a case of what we do with it. For me, again, coming back to well-being, there's a real opportunity here for a technology that doesn't just make us more productive, but makes us makes our jobs better, makes our lives better, makes our work more fun and more interesting and more satisfying.
Nice. So basically, like efficiency, quality, and creativity and well-being of the teams makes a lot of sense. There is a lot of talk around how the job profile of proposal managers will change. I know you touched upon it briefly in your previous response, but like, if there was one thing that you would say that's going to be like how the role of humans will change in proposal management over the next couple of years, like what would you say that would be?
I think the biggest thing is it's going to give us the opportunity to just be more strategic, to make better and smarter decisions, and I think it's going to change proposals from being an essay writing competition where the best essay wins. I think we're all going to be on a level playing field now, with an equally good essay writer at our disposal, and so now it's going to be, well, something else has to win. So it has to be a better strategy. It has to be a better story. It has to be better information and more insight that we're bringing into our proposals, and not just how well we can answer the questions.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Like if the playing field has been leveled in terms of essay writing, then it all comes down to strategy and of course the service and the product that you people are offering. Makes a lot of sense. Um, one one challenge that I've heard from every single person I've spoken to in the proposal and bid space is about content management, right? How do you think AI, if at all, is going to help with that challenge in this space?
Yeah, I think so. First of all, I think my personal belief is I don't think AI in any way gets rid of content managers. I think same as proposal writers. I don't think it replaces them. I don't think it's something that's going to take your job. And for content managers, I also don't think it replaces them, and I don't think it will take their job, but I think it will change it. I know a lot of content managers are finding that they have their own challenges. One is around time. There's kind of a race to get the very latest content available and being used by proposal writers in the fastest possible time. But at the same time, they still have to process that content. They still have to check it and verify it and have it signed off by legal and compliant and whoever else. And so they're kind of under this time pressure of the new content is being created, but it's still not available to proposal teams until it can go through a process, and that's very challenging for them, especially the more content there is available. And I also think that's made worse then by people like me saying, well, wouldn't it be great if you had lots of small chunks of content with lots of different variations on the same theme that mean you can tell lots of different types of stories about what we do. So you then end up with different variants. And I mean, sometimes that variant can just be that we need content in different languages. And so managing all of that kind of massive amounts of content and getting it available to the proposal teams on time becomes an even bigger problem. And then, of course, within all of that, what you're bound to end up with is just loads and loads of duplicates, because you're not going to be able to spot all of the identical content that happens to come in, or even whether it is identical or just a different variant of the same theme. So I think finding and eliminating duplicates is really challenging. The good news, in my view, with the with AI is that those are things that it's actually really good at doing. So if it can do those things and can turn around content much more quickly, make it much more available, produce different variations on demand, identify patterns of duplicates, then content managers can spend much more time looking for really great content, doing more client research, doing more market research, and really kind of stacking their content libraries with even more high quality stuff.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. We so one of the biggest challenges that when we started Inventive, one of the biggest challenges was this, like content managers were just like overwhelmed with duplicate content and conflicting content within the libraries. And as it turns out, it's not actually an easy problem to solve with AI. I think we've spent a lot of research cycles trying to get that right. And I've been in the LLM space for last like 5-6 years at this point of time. So the biggest learning that I've seen across a lot of like startups and companies is like it's easy to create a demo, but to actually create a reliable system takes a lot of time and effort. And yeah, we're making some good progress, but good to know that like you feel that that's like a huge challenge generally about duplication and conflicting content finding.
I think so. And there are some great content managers out there. Some clients of mine who are doing really great work with their content and managing their duplicates and so on. But it's it's hard and it's not particularly rewarding. So it would be great if we could solve that problem.
Yep. This field of AI is like improving or just changing so quickly, right? It was just what, like 1.5 years ago, roughly, when ChatGPT came out and it just took off, right? You have expressed a lot of interesting opinions on LinkedIn about, what you see or what you are seeing other thought leaders kind of think about this space. I'm curious, like, how do you think that this space is going to evolve in next like 3 to 5 years?
Yeah, uh, I'm gonna offer an opinion and then contradict myself. Um, so
Sure.
I think outside of people who are really deeply involved in LLM and the AI development, um, I think trying to predict anything now about what's going to happen over the next 3 to 5 years, it's changing so quickly that I predict that any prediction will be wrong. Um, so that said, I think there are some things that you can definitely sort of see starting to happen over the next few years. I mean, we're already seeing models are getting bigger and smarter. But I also, I mean, the Apple Intelligence announcement the other day, I think was a good example of this. I think they'll also get smaller. So they'll be on our phones and in smaller devices, and contributing things there. I think they'll become more and more embedded. I think it's that I know that there's a bit of a push it now from procurement to have disclosure of where AI is used, and I think within a few years that's going to be almost impossible to unpick where AI might have been used anywhere in the process, because it'll just be so endemic in everything that we do. And then I think the final thing I think will just become easier to use. Um, there'll be a lot more sort of systematizing of how AI works, and more kind of button pressing rather than having to create these incredibly clever and detailed prompts. I think a lot more of that will be simplified and made a lot easier for us.
Got it. Cool. What just last question on the Gen AI side of things. Like, if you were to give one advice to proposal teams at this point of time, like what would that be?
Don't panic. Um,
Mm,
I think for those who already have a really well constructed bid library of content, I think your bid library will still matter. It's still going to be important. It's still going to be a great resource, and AI is going to do more and better things with that, perhaps. But that content still has value and is still going to be good for you. Um, I think for those who perhaps don't already have a bid library, the almost the opposite is true. That I don't think AI is going to solve everything. Certainly not straight away. I don't think it's going to make um, I don't think it's going to make a lack of content suddenly become not a problem. Um, I think that there's still a lot of work that will need to go into getting good results and good output out of AI if you don't have anything that it can work on as source material. Um, but with all of that, I think the main thing is just don't panic. It's there and it's going to change things, but it's not a revolution just yet. And then probably finally, I would say, if you are considering getting into AI seriously, I would say be ambitious, but maybe start small. Um, and, solve a problem, a small problem, one at a time, but have a big picture idea of where you want to go with it ultimately.
cool. Awesome set of advice. This brings me to the last section, and this is just general tips and advice that you might have for people in careers or just some resources that you find useful. So, what's the best lesson that you have learned through your career in the bidding and proposal space?
So I think it has to be you have to take care of yourself. I mean, I've definitely been that superhero bid manager who, worked really long hours and I enjoyed it at the time. It wasn't good for me though,
Mm,
and I'm not sure really that outside of a small um, group of people that really knew and understood and saw it, that anybody really cared, because we want to win, um, and that's important. But winning at the cost of your own time and sanity and health is not worth it, and you're not that's not what you're going to get the reward for. So definitely look after yourself. I think it's really important.
nice. Yeah, that's a great piece of advice and learning, I guess. Um, the next set of questions you can answer in as little words as possible, or
Right.
you can use like whichever, yeah, you'd like, but we call it the rapid fire. So what's your proposal slash bid philosophy?
Oh, qualify. I mean, uh, qualify hard. Someone once said to me, first place is the winner, and second place is the first person who qualifies out. So, yeah, qualify hard. Only bid on stuff that that you really think that you have an opportunity to win and you're well placed for, because working on losing bids is so soul destroying.
I see. Okay, cool. What's your career philosophy been?
Uh, I think it's learning. I mean,
Hmm.
I love looking for learning outside of the space that I'm in. Um, so and for that, there's so much opportunity now with podcasts and books, and definitely learn from mentors. In the technology space, I'm a big believer that go play with it, go see what it does, make
Hmm.
mistakes, um, find out what's possible, and play with it, and you'll learn much more about how it works.
Awesome. Yeah. And thanks a lot for contributing to learning of others. I'm sure people will listen to the podcast and learn a lot about from your opinions here.
Hope so.
Uh, and the last thing is, you seem to be a lot into books and a lot of like different paradigms. Like, what are the top books that you would recommend, maybe related to proposal management or maybe generally in their lives?
Yeah, so we've talked about thinking fast and slow. I mean, that's always on top of
Mm-hmm.
my recommendations for anybody. I mean, certainly in a business environment. I mean, so much of what we do in our working lives is about decision making and influencing decision making of others. And if you can understand how decisions are made by human brains, then it's a big advantage. Plus, it's a great. I mean, it's just a great book. So it's definitely worth reading. And then related to that, I think there's a book called The Chimp Paradox by Steve Peters.
Hmm.
I don't know if you've heard of that one. He does a lot of
No, I haven't.
kind of sports psychology type coaching, and it's based on a similar thing, that we have different systems of thinking, and we need to understand how that works, and then we can really manage ourselves and manage our emotional state, um, manage how we react to certain circumstances. And I mean, it's just great if you're involved in anything that has anything to do with dealing with people. It's also one of those great books when you find other people who have read it. There's almost a secret language of talking about chimps and gremlins and things that you can get into, which is quite fun. And then a third one would be there's a book by a guy called Paul Dolan called Happiness by Design. which are really important in my life. And he has done a lot of work in sort of working out happiness surveys for governments. So to find out how happy or not a population is and what makes them happy or less happy. And I think his findings on how happiness works in people are really important, and they really help you to understand what's working in your life, what's not working, why certain things you try to change don't seem to make any real difference, and why perhaps small changes in other areas could make a huge difference to how you feel about yourself. So that's a big recommendation for me. It's a great book.
Awesome. Yeah, that sounds like a good set of books. I'm really looking forward to the chimp paradox, so we can speak in that secret language next time we chat. Awesome. This has been great, Darrell. Is there anything else you want to leave us with? Any advice for the listeners in the proposal space, in general careers, in sales? Anything else before we wrap up?
I think I've talked before about being rigorously lazy, and it's just a phrase that I really love. So I describe myself as rigorously lazy. I'm always looking for the fastest, easiest, simplest way to get something done. But I also, the rigorously part of that is I still want it to be good. The quality has to be there. So for me, one of the ways that I am rigorously lazy is looking for, how could I automate this, or how could technology help me to do that better or faster? And so I think just having that kind of mindset of looking at individual tasks that you might be performing and thinking, well, perhaps a machine or a better process could be doing that faster and easier, and then I don't have to, and then feel confident and comfortable with your laziness. It's we should celebrate being lazy.
Awesome. That's a good note to close this. We should celebrate being lazy. Awesome. Thank you so much, Darrell. I think this was a great conversation. A lot of interesting insights, and loved having you on the podcast.
That's great. It's been a pleasure. Thanks very much.
Awesome. Thank you so much.